I'll just give a brief overview of the agenda and everything that I'll be talking about today. So I'm going to begin with just a quick introduction about loss and all things regarding grief, and the way that loss, grief, and mourning end up being very relevant to identity and personality. These concepts of identity and personality are different in some important ways, as we'll talk about today, but they are very similar, and they are both implicated in the experience of loss and grief and mourning in some really interesting ways. So we'll just begin with a brief introduction about those concepts, and then I'll launch into a case vignette of a woman named Kayla, who I worked with a few years ago. And I'll be using this case throughout the presentation just to give us something to think about in terms of what narrative therapy looks like, how we can use the techniques of narrative therapy with our bereaved clients. And I'll be referencing back to that case throughout the presentation. So after I talk about her briefly right out of the gate, I'll then segue into a whole conversation about narrative therapy, what it is. I'm going to talk about some of the more classic techniques that tend to be associated with this type of therapy. And for some of you who are already familiar with narrative therapy, this is going to be a bit of review. Our bereaved clients are often resistant to reconstructing different aspects, not only of their narrative, but of who they are for various reasons. Okay. And again, the theme here is that they're like, it's not that they're resistant to us telling them to change. They may present with certain things in therapy that suggest that they do want to adapt in different ways. They want to acquire new meaning. They want to open up new possibilities for how to cope. Nonetheless, they might feel conflicted about that and resistant to the idea of using narrative therapy to write a sort of new perspective on who they want to become. Okay.